Welcome first-time listeners and returners to the Sports Deli, where everyone deserves a seat at the table. What about fucking Colin? Why does he not have a fucking job? Because he's still being whiteballed. Why is Tom not speaking out about that? He should be his biggest fucking ally. And he hasn't said one fucking thing. A lot of people that have come on this show, I don't know why, they've gotten some good fucking jobs afterwards. Jim Rome in the jungle. It's right here in the Sports Deli, baby. We got some good ass karma right here. Let's fucking go.
I love it.
Man.
I love it.
We hope you enjoy today's show, everyone. All right, let's rock and roll. So today's podcast is brought to you by my TikTok shop. It is unbelievable. I have hundreds of items in there. You would not believe the array of things that I have to offer you, not only for the holidays or birthdays, but just in general. It's literally a game changer. Check it out at tiktok.com/@MikeHootner. Today's podcast is also sponsored by my Amazon shop. Check it out at amazon.com/shop/the Sports Deli. And you can see all the products that I've done videos on, my idea list, and my shoppable photos. I may make a commission on any of the things that you watch or see, but it's at no extra cost to you. Enjoy today's show. Do we have to refer to him as Mr. Duncan? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, please, I'm very formal, Secretary Duncan.
There you go. Exactly.
Just put a sir on the end of it. Secretary Duncan, sir.
All right, here we go. Let's do this.
Hey, Mike.
Dr. Smith, what an honor.
Well, I'm the one honored.
Well.
You have some amazing guests on here.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. Yeah, you just never know. You just be authentic, and I guess the rest takes care of itself.
I hope so. So,
yes.
What's up? What are we gonna do here today?
I'm waiting to see if a couple other people come on. A couple of surprises here to I think that will enhance the conversation and give it a little spice. But quick intro, and then yeah, we want to hear all about your amazing journey and the things that you've navigated and your perspective, and some of what your students have learned and come back and shared with you years later. And there's always a lot of things that will resonate with people that you never know might spark them to be a more authentic, better version of themselves when you least expect it. So
Definitely.
Sort of what happened with me, because, I was talking about things that were irrelevant an hour and a half later, 3.5 years ago. And then I just felt like I had to pivot because something happened in 2020. Well, a couple of things happened in 2020, but the light never went on like it did, with Colin. So, and George Floyd. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Lots of lights, actually.
Well, you've seen a lot more lights than I have.
Yeah, I've seen them. Yeah.
Some you didn't want to see, and some blue and red, and others that you probably wanted to see later on when it was more within your control.
Yeah. Those $200 lights.
Right. Absolutely. All right. We're so honored on this first day of Sweet Potato Awareness Month and 10 days away from Veterans Day to welcome Smitty. Now, I'm being presumptuous that is one of his probably many nicknames. He may not like Smitty, but when someone has the last name of Smith, it's just sort of assumed that Smitty is one of your nicknames.
Comes with the territory.
Yes, it comes with the territory. That's what I meant. See, I could have summarized it. So you're a doctor, and that is why I could have just left that to you instead of being so wordy. You would probably give me a D if I had written a paper on the reasons as to why people have a nickname of Smitty. Dr. Smith earned his Ph.D. at the University of Connecticut, and I'm sure he was ecstatic when the Huskies won last year's national championship under the leadership of Danny Hurley. His teachings and research focus on the sociology of sport, social stratification, criminal justice, and race. He's the author of 12 books that I know of, and today you will hear the rest of the story. You can find him on LinkedIn, where he posts so often about so many fascinating things about the aforementioned in particular. Truly honored that you're here with us, where everyone deserves a seat at the table, especially Dr. Smith.
Honored to be here. been waiting for this for a long time.
We are joined also by Anthony Alegrete, co-founder, along with his wife, of the socially conscious cannabis brand 40 Tons, who also served time in prison. Ant, morning. Appreciate you could join us today.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. How are you guys?
Great, great, great to meet you.
You too.
Yeah,
What's
you know,
going
I met Anthony coaching his kids, and just had no idea he was getting ready to go down this path. And I researched him as I do all my clients, and had no idea about his incredible story of serving time in prison and why he's such a big ally now. And his story could be a podcast in and of itself, if not several. But we definitely are honored that he's here today to talk, about some of the same things that you, Dr. Smith, are going to be sharing with us, giving both of your perspectives it's a different world. I don't know anything about it. Anthony, anything off the top of the dome, as Harry Mack would say, that you want to share before I continue with Dr. Smith? You like what I did there? Off the top of the dome?
Yes, yes, I do. I gotta so in honor of the hoot, I gotta give it to him. I gotta do it one more.
Oh, God. I love it, bro. I love it.
Yeah, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
When you were coaching, and you're on the court and you're coaching and you're doing it, and then all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, you hear this just loud. What? I mean, it got to make you feel good, dude. Come on.
I honestly, like, I don't hear the crowd typically, but I don't mind engaging the crowd, usually only if they're right, to
Good.
just to diffuse the situation. Like, I'll literally hear people yelling stuff, and I'll be like, "You right?" And stuff like. But yeah, you guys were always so supportive and very demanding of your kids in a good way. But yeah, it was fun. It went quick. Absolutely.
It did. They still talk about it, and both of them are still on their super grizzly grind. Dominic is just gone into the stratosphere, and they're doing things like Dom meditates for like an hour a day, and like he stretches for 30 minutes before every single workout, and like at the myofascial level now, like, you know what I mean? Like,
That's
he's
crazy.
really, really taking it. And he I think he posted you the other day because he's now
Yeah, he did.
he's taking classes or like a basketball thing with some guy that's like in the neighborhood that's at a place, and like he's crushing it. So he
That's
always
cool.
talks about you. Both of the boys always talk about you.
I appreciate that, and like Dr. Smith has impacted so many people over the years, whether it's at Wake Forest or, Delaware right now. Um, that's what we're trying to do, is pay it forward. And both of you have done that for a while now, and you know, inspire people still, to this day. So, Dr. Smith, you mentioned some things about the 80s. But how was it growing up before the civil rights era? And Anthony, you can jump in anytime. And obviously in the '60s, where there was so much turmoil, did you feel like you were living a lie before the '60s? Because your language for so long was fear and survival, whereas now it's a little bit different. But did you feel that way back then? In terms of generational trauma and what you had to navigate back then versus now?
Actually, Mike, no.
No.
Uh, People can look it up and see how old I am, but it was a interesting time because things were quote unquote opening up. We would have reason to double check that today, but in the moment, in the communities where I grew up, Black people could buy a house. The one high school in town was integrated. There were no cops. There were no soldiers to make that happen.
And where was that?
In Long Island.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Nassau County,
Did not
Long
know
Island.
that.
And the high school had actually had a swimming pool in it, inside swimming pool that everybody used. The sport teams were integrated. not the quarterback position in football. That person was always a white guy. And people were starting to move across town, moving away from what we would call the like iconic ghetto to all parts of town. And jobs in that era where people worked in I don't know what to call them now, shopping malls, not like the ones we have now, but I had a staple of 5 or 6 standard stores, and non-whites could work in those places. Obviously, a lot of the work was service work, but the major employer out there was Grumman Aircraft. They made bombers for the military, and it was an integrated plant. So it was I wish somebody would write about this particular place, because it can't be unique, but it was there. And when people go in and they look at the literature, the studies of civil rights, and all the beatbacks and police and those kinds of things, not there. There are incidents, I can point to some, but not in a sort of very broad way. So it was a different place, a different time.
You play sports?
Yeah, actually, not very good, but
well, you and Anthony have something in common there. If you watch Anthony play ball, you'd be like, bro.
Bro, I'm Dennis Rodman with it. I'm responsible. Let me tell you, I fight for every ball. I'm responsible for 50 points a game, even though I only score 2 to 4 points. My assist game and my rebound game is ridiculous.
But he could get under his kid's skin like no other. I can tell you that much, and hype them up, man. That was fun to watch.
That's what you learn when you play like that.
It's funny, you not to get off topic, but now that they're older and it's getting even more competitive, and Dominic has grown into being a man, that like Dominic has challenged Nick to they're really into boxing now.
Oh, wow.
And so Dom is like, I'm gonna box Nick, and I'm like, dude, you're gonna get destroyed. Like it's like Mike Tyson fighting Floyd Mayweather. Even though Floyd Mayweather is the best in the world, it doesn't matter. Like the size isn't there, but it's hilarious.
So, Ann, I know you,
Mr. Earl, you and I, we'll play a game of 21 against Hoot, and we'll beat them.
I'm down for that. I'm down for
no,
that.
you won't. No, you won't. Those ankles get broke quick. So, Ann, I know you're up against the clock a little bit, so we can jump ahead, because you serve time, and now your mission,
Sure.
is to help nonviolent offenders, in particular, people that are incarcerated for cannabis convictions. And you see, for those of you listening and not watching, Dr. Smith is shaking his head, because it's just something that's ridiculous to all of us, but it started not recently. You could point to mandatory minimums, you could point to 3 strikes and you're out, you could point to a lot of things. But and what question do you have for him, having served time, and where we're going now, and based on his research and his passion for this subject?
So for perspective, my friend of 29 years, Corvain Cooper, was serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole over a nonviolent cannabis offense. We sold weed together. We did a lot together. I mean, we grew up together. I met him in 1994, when I was in high school, and we've been friends ever since. And so, we started hustling. He's from the hood. He's from, east side of South Central Los Angeles, African-American gentleman. And we went to jail 11 years ago. And so I had been in and out of prison prior to that a couple of times, always over the plant, right? I was never a gang member. I was never, a violent individual. I never sold hard drugs. I never did anything like that, but I did sell weed. And I've been selling weed for my whole life, pretty much, my whole adult life. And so we ended up getting in trouble, and he ended up getting a life sentence due to a technicality, which, his predicate felony was he sold 1 pound of weed. So he got a felony. And then his second felony was he sold a bottle of codeine cough syrup, lean, without a prescription. And that was his second felony. So on the third felony, it's an automatic life sentence because that's how it works in the feds. And so, long story short, we all served time over that. And then he got a life sentence. He was denied under the Obama administration twice. And so the only way for him to get out of jail, he exhausted his appeals, is if the president of the United States lets him out. We thought we had action with Obama, but then it just didn't happen. It got denied. And then miraculously on Trump's last day of office, last hour of office, signed the presidential clemency and freed my partner. And so that was due to the efforts of not just me and L'Oreal, but 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 = 50. All the advocacy groups, all of the people signing a petition, everything, right? It wasn't just one of us. And so the community really came together. Nas, the rapper, did a documentary called Smoke and Black America that aired on BET about 4 to 5 months before Trump left office. And we were featured in that. We were the largest segment in that. And basically it was about cannabis and the Black community. And on the part where it came to social justice, it was Corvain's story. And so we got him out. We built the brand 40 tons because the newspaper article read California man sentenced to life in prison for 40 tons of weed. So we took a negative and we turned it into a positive. 40 tons was also, it was the amount that the conspiracy was. They never found 1 gram of weed. It was all from like 5, 6, 7 years back that ended up coming back to haunt us because, our friends had turned on us. And so we built this brand in hopes to just bring awareness to his situation. And then what ended up happening was it was during the pandemic, and everybody was on Clubhouse. And so we ended up getting to everybody in the entire industry, and they believed in what we were doing. And then we ended up getting a deal and working our way, into the CPG side of the business. And so, fast forward, it's been, almost 2.5 years now since he's been home. We started a career conference to help workforce development and help get people hired that have been to jail, and minorities and BIPOC communities that just don't even have access. So it isn't even just if you have cannabis convictions, it's people that need access. We're a Black female owned company. My wife is the CEO, I'm the COO, and Corvain is the chief brand ambassador and co-founder. And so we're a minority driven company. I consider myself, I'm not a minority, but I have been to prison multiple times. And, so I'm definitely legacy. And so I kind of look at myself as a bridge between both sides. And so that's kind of what we've been doing. We've been hustling, pushing to try to make, this industry a more diverse and inclusive industry. And we believe that if we're going to be making billions of dollars on this plant, then nobody should be in prison for the same exact thing that we're making money off of. And so that's the core of who we are.
Fascinating. And your wife, she's Black, if that wasn't clear to everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, so she's African American, and we've been together for 23 years now. The kids that we were talking about earlier with Hoot, those are our kids. And so, we faced a lot of, stuff, nothing compared to what you dealt with, Earl, in the 60s and, in your younger years, but definitely we can say that we empathize and understanding of dealing with, racism and the different things that are associated with it, just because, we are of a mixed marriage, so, at the end of the day, we just want to push good. We want to, do what's right and help free these guys and girls, because we were once those people and nobody came to get us, and so we had to hustle ourselves to get ourselves out of prison. And thankfully we got the president to sign the paper to let him out. And so I guess, maybe my question is, and this might be kind of very existential, but like, how this plant is, and whether you agree with with its medicinal uses or not, it's legal now, right? And so it's legal at the state level, but at the federal level, it's not. But it's like, how do we bridge the gap between this, like, let me back it up a little bit. Predominantly people that are incarcerated for cannabis offenses are Black and brown folks. So there's a disproportionate amount of people that are locked up over the very same thing that someone like me may not get locked up over. And I guess, like, how do we fix that, right? And I know that's such a grand question, but it's like, what do we do? What are some things that we can do to help, make it to, to where we can fight some of these injustices? And if that question's too much, I apologize, but it's like, that's kind of what we're trying to learn how to do, what we're trying to do in order to help our communities.
I don't think the question is too much. I think it is the question. The stupidity actually over something being legal on this level and illegal on another level. I would imagine most people can't even comprehend that. You fly from where I am in the East Coast, you pass through Colorado, you stop in Pueblo, you go into a dispensary, you pick up whatever you're interested in, and then you fly back home. And at one point, it's legal. And at another point, when you arrive at LaGuardia or someplace, it's illegal. And if that's not, complicated for people to understand, you're sitting here and we're talking on this show, and it's not a show being broadcast from inside of a penitentiary somewhere. We're in the free world, right? So there are people who I've seen incarcerated over the past 12 months through the work that we do, who are actually sitting in prison for some issue related to marijuana.
Yeah.
And I would say, as a simple man, why aren't you out if it's legal? And now we're into all the complexities of is it or isn't it, and how do you get over that hump? I'm a little bit not happy with the Obama administration. I won't say with him himself, but the administration, for all the hoopla and notoriety that they grabbed about prison visits and walking up and down the tier, talking to people and whatnot, and did very little from what we could tell. And now you got this character who's got so many felonies. If he ever gets locked up, he'll never get out. And he signed the papers for your friend.
Right.
I mean, talk about contradictions, and that's what makes this world go around. So when you're telling me that you folks and parts of your family are doing this hard work, I'm ecstatic, absolutely ecstatic. We have a committee at the University of intellectual types,
Mhm.
and you
Unlike
go
me.
in, you teach an English course, and the the
I
the
get the
person
claim.
that gets a few credits, and we can't even get the university to sign off so that those credits they can matriculate. So once you pile them up, you can graduate. They claim that the board of trustees and that are uncomfortable, and I'm thinking, shit, you got people walking around campus who I'm uncomfortable with. And so you got all this nonsense going on, and it takes, like you said, those support committees, this little group here, another little group over there. And if people don't think that kind of organizing, community organizing, that don't work, I think we just heard of a prime example right here today, for sure.
Yeah. It's tough, right? Because
Appreciate it.
it's not a, thank you. It's not a problem that's like a one-sided answer, right? Like it's so deep because you got we could go down a rabbit hole of, the prison, profit for prison complex, prison complex. We can go towards, things like it's it's a whole industry in order to keep people in prison, and cannabis offenses are one of the largest in terms of quantity to arrest people, right? So there's that whole rabbit hole. But here's what I always look at, because, you know, obviously, you know, and Hoot's one of them. I don't know your take on it, but a lot of people don't like Trump, right? And so, you know, the guy gave us our life back, right? So it's like, how can we hate on the guy that, you know, did this? So we never say nothing negative. In fact, we're one of the only like street cats that like get a free pass to say we're cool with Trump, because obviously he saved our friend's life. But the contradiction point that you're talking about, like, there's so much contradiction and so much in the way these laws are written from state to state, and the way that you can do something in Colorado, but versus where you're, you know, I mean, and that is, I think, where the problem lies. There's nothing that's universal. Like, we all know that universally shoplifting is illegal, right? And if you do it, you get in trouble for it. With cannabis, there is none of that. So it's like, it's really, really tricky. It's tricking, but it's also like, it affects our psyches. Like, imagine thinking that you're doing something legal, but then you still got to look over your shoulder, and that has an effect on people's mental health. You know, especially me, especially Corbin. Like, at any given time, we could be arrested for this stuff. You know what I mean? And because I've done everything that we possibly can to like insulate ourselves legally, technically speaking, if someone has a bone to pick, like, it could go all bad again, right? And so it's like, I think that also stems from like being revolutionary-ish. Like, we're still going to push the line to make this plant free. And if it means that we have to deal with these things, that's what it is. I mean, you know, so it's really complex, man. But we can't solve laws. We don't have the connections to do that. But what we can do is provide resources and opportunities for people post-prison to now take their lives in a good direction. And so that's where we found where we can focus our positive good in the world.
Do you think it's worth discussing the disproportionate component just in general with regards to the prison systems in terms of statistics that, you know, you can learn a lot about with the Black and brown community, like as a fundamental part to all of this?
I mean, it's massively disproportionate if you look at, you know, just statistically who's arrested for what. I mean, I've been to prison. I've been to multiple prisons. I've been to heavy level, like Gladiator Academy prisons, down to Disneyland level prisons, right? And it's just disproportionate. I'm the minority, right? And so you can physically see it, right? But I mean, I can't speak on behalf of what a minority feels like, right? I can only speak to like me being as close to it as possible. But I mean, it's wrong, right? And it takes voices like us to step up and say it, because, you know, the Black man preaching on behalf of the Black man, nobody, the white person that doesn't care doesn't want to hear that. But when the white person steps up and preaches on behalf of the Black man, and that's arbitrary, just minorities, underserved people, underrepresented people, right? When we stand up for those people, it now says something, and it's more powerful, and we need more allies and people like that to do that, because unfortunately this world is just, you know, a racist world. And so, and the people that run it look like us, and so we have to be the ones to kind of bridge that gap and be that bridge to help, you know, push for what's right.
Yeah, in a in a couple of hours, I'm going to be going up to campus to give a lecture in a colleague's class on some work we did in solitary confinement. And I can tell you, in those, I think there were 9 prisons that we conducted the research, almost to a 1 for every white, and this was in solitary, for every white, and we call them prisoners, for every white prisoner that I interviewed, at least, before the interviews ended, these guys would tell me it was worse for the Black prisoners than for them. And we're talking about little stuff like getting a few extra pieces of fruit, out of the dining hall, chow hall, whatever you call it, to using the lingo that they were using, having your medicine withheld,
Where
having your
was this? Which state?
I'm I can't. We agreed not to divulge the state. Eastern Seaboard. I'll go that close.
Got it. Yeah.
Anybody who reads the book real carefully will figure it out. But we had to get in this darn place. We had to do the NDA or whatever they want to call it.
Yeah.
And these white guys would say, I get my 3 meals, I get my insulin, I get my rolls of toilet paper, those kinds of things. But guys down the tier, they get burnt all the time over little stuff. And so you would have to know prison life, having had to be incarcerated yourself to understand these slights that are embedded within what we call white racial resentment. The little slights, because somebody's sitting up and their grandmother or grandfather sold their insurance so they can get a little plastic TV, and they're watching this TV, and some CO is pissed off, just totally pissed off, because that person has to walk up and down the stairs to bring lunch, bring breakfast, bring dinner, come back, pick up the tray, pick up the trash, and this guy's sitting in there with commissary, TV. It breeds the racial antagonism, absolutely breeds it. And where you would think, well, for whatever reason, these folks are locked up, they're in here, they can't walk out. You're getting paid, you got a job. If you were in the military, you got extra bonuses on trying to buy a house, whatever you get as a CO. Why are you ticked off at this person who's down on their luck, who got 15 to go or 10 to go or whatever, or life? I'm sitting in there interviewing some lifers on death row, and I got guards telling me, just waving arms and shit, like, don't believe them. They lie all the time. And I'm thinking, this is this person's 5 minutes. Let them have this 5 minutes. It's you've been there. It's a terrible system, and if anybody thinks it's otherwise, they're crazy. So, in terms of Donald Trump, look, when you live in this world, you have to understand there's give and take. And if he was, or his administration was smart enough to sign those papers, hallelujah.
Yeah.
Now, for the fat,
was
racist, misogynist SOB, F him. On the other side of the street, can't deal with his nonsense, what he's done, the racism that comes out of his mouth, the dog whistles, etc. But on the other side of the street, he did a good thing, and I'm glad he did it.
Yeah, I mean, his daughter was really heavily responsible, and so was Kushner. So
Yeah.
Ivanka and Kushner were really, really supporters of nonviolent cannabis prisoners, and they said that Trump resonated with Corbin because he had 2 daughters. So you never know what will trigger someone to do something. You know what I mean? It's like you hear the story of like the Nazi German soldier saving the life of this one, Jewish old lady in World War II, and you're like, but that's not supposed to happen. You know what I mean? It's like, but it's like, it's negative in every other part of their life, but then for this one reason, they did this good deed that can't be, challenged. You just don't know why it happens. It just happens. But at the end of the day, we're just thankful that it happened.
Oh, Mike threw out a question about the civil rights movement. If you
Mhm,
want to talk about a contradictory movement, there it is. Once you get past the March on Washington and
mhm.
get deep inside of the things that were going on, it was
Yeah.
unbelievable. I mean, just yesterday, they're talking about a new book about this Black woman socialite in Harlem
Mhm,
who had all these heavyweight white guys, right-wing types,
mhm.
coming into these parties she was throwing. You know, who knows what they were doing, but they were there, and she could have cared less because once they left, they put their money on the table. And she raised money for all kinds of programs in the civil rights movement. And this is just a little known historical fact because
Wow.
people did these things quietly. For whatever reason, it didn't look like they should have been doing them, but they were doing them. And so we live in a contradictory society all over the place, everywhere.
How old were you during the March on Washington?
25,
Um,
23.
yeah, 20s, early
Did you
20s.
go? Were you there?
I
Did you go to it?
no, no.
Where did you live?
Here's why I didn't go to it. Because I was being drafted into the military. And so my butt was going to Vietnam, which is where I went. They went to Washington. I went over there.
Thank you for serving. Um, did you end up going to the Million Man March?
No, no. Because if I remember, this was headed up by
Minister Farrakhan.
Farrakhan and his folks. And by that time, at least in my life, um, people who I looked up to, Muhammad Ali and Kareem and some of these others who publicly said they were Muslims, there seemed to be, again, a whole lot of contradictions taking place. And, you know, if you're hating, if you're professing hate for one group of people over another, I have no time for you.
Sure. Um, you know, I just asked because I know a lot of those monumental events um are, they're places in history, and just wanted to get your take on any of that stuff. L'Oreal went with her aunt, who's no longer with us, and she, that's like a memory that she'll never forget. Um, did you go to the Obama administration, or excuse me, the Obama inauguration?
No.
I got to go to that. That was pretty intense. That was awesome. Being among
Invited,
the people.
invited as a guest,
Yeah.
or yeah, no.
It was nothing like it. I've never been to nothing like it. I've never been to anything that had millions of people at it, right? Like I've been to a stadium with 100, that's different. But like when you're actually on the streets and there's a million people around you, like it's just, the energy is just crazy. And it was so cold that day. It was like 5-10 degrees. Everybody, we were bundled up. Like it was crazy, but like you could feel the energy of the folks. And it was like, I don't know if you remember, but like when Obama got elected, it was almost like this, at least it was this feeling of like the old guard is out and the new is coming in, right? And whether you agree or disagree with Obama and what he did or didn't do or this, that's besides the point. The point of the matter was that it was historical, right? And it had never happened before, and it just, this energy that was there, it was so dope. I'll never forget it. And I went with all my buddies, and one of them who is no longer is with us anymore, an older gentleman. So like we got to have these experiences, and like that was like, I guess what I would say, like a Black experience that I got to share in because I was there. You know what I'm saying? Like the Million Man March would be that, or the Walk on Washington. You know what I mean? So I got, those are the three big, mass collection of people. And I got to share in that experience, and it was just really, really, it was amazing. It was beautiful.
I think it's wonderful. And you never forget those experiences. But you know, for somebody like myself and the kind of things we do and the work we do, it forces us to ask critical questions. Two-term Black president, 2 full terms, not assassinated, luckily. And then here we are in 2023, moving to 2024, and we're in a mess. And you ask the question, how could you have those two terms and allow other folks to take office afterwards and just crap on the country and have people clapping and going to rallies and jumping up and down and sending money in and whatnot to stop other people from doing birthright things like to vote. Now, you know, when you really talk to people, at least college students, you have to be clear to them how the voting system works because they don't know. I mean, they don't know how it works. And you got to spend time doing seventh grade civics, explaining things like the Electoral College and what have you. But here we are, the Supreme Court is dissing out every week, beating back states for gerrymandering, for fixing districts so that certain people can and other people can't. And you say, well, why are we fooling with that in the 2020s? Because back then, when people went to Washington, when people had the marches, when Obama's administration was in office for 2 terms, we were supposed to erase all that nonsense. And here we are. And we have police killing people with immunity. In fact, I'm reading something the other day that the police that killed that young woman, Breonna Taylor, also turned around and killed more people because there was no accountability for what they did to her. The disproportionate amount of people sitting in prison, actually just this afternoon, I'm pulling together some notes for the lecture tonight. And I'm thinking, you know, Black men are not a lot of people. Black men 18 to 50 or whatever it is, not a lot of people. But when you jump into the prison stats, they're there. Then when you go inside the prisons to solitary, and you know this from being incarcerated, then most people are not in solitary because of the crime they committed to be incarcerated in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they did something stupid, like maybe took too many bed sheets or whatever they did.
Or got into, you know, a mutual combat fight with someone or
Exactly.
whatever it was,
Exactly.
right? So yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
And so when you look at the numbers inside the prison system, it can't be, and nobody can tell us genetically that these Black men are predestined to be criminals. It's just not there. The data is just not there. The science doesn't point in that direction, but they're locked up, and they're locked up for stupid stuff. They're killed for stupid stuff. You know, when you asked me about where I was at a certain point in time, I remember going to like 8th grade, passing through Woolworths, 5 and 10 or whatever it was at the time, and having a cop put a gun to my head. What are you doing? Because I guess the people in Woolworth were saying, you know, these junior high school students come through, you go from the front and then you come out the back and you're on the, you know, walk up to the school. As they're passing through, they're stealing candy or whatever.
This is the 50s.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
And you say, well, you put a gun to a you know, a junior high school student because somebody in the store said that some kids were stealing, you know, Tootsie Rolls or whatever? And the answer is yes. And you look at the police force, I told you that certain things were integrated in this neighborhood, et cetera. The only institution that was all white, all through the time I went to junior high, high school, the military and whatnot, was the police force, the police and fire department. And you know, to integrate those places, you had to bring suits that went to the Supreme Court, you know, to desegregate police departments, to desegregate fire departments. And so, you know, when you ask students tough questions, they don't like it. And And now it's worse because you got governors and whatnot telling people what they can teach, what kind of books you can read and whatnot. So I used to have exercise where I would ask students in class, there's a fire on this street. It's, it's a nice little street, tree-lined street, integrated neighborhood, and there's a fire. But let's just assume that, certain groups, maybe Puerto Ricans or whatever, live on one side and some other folks live on the other side. There's a fire on both sides. Where's the fire engine going to go? Which fire are they going to put out first? That's a deep question because it's real. Which fire are they going to put out first? That's like, the black cops who get killed by white cops all the time. But white cops don't get killed by black cops. It hardly ever happens. And you could be a black cop, you got police on the back of your shirt or your jacket, you got the thing around your neck, you're yelling, I'm a police person, whatever, or the people around you are yelling, this person's a police person. And that's not a story that hits the front page very often. And since we track police killings, I mean, it's constant. So there's a lot, and I know we're talking about sports, but inside sports world, it's a tough scene. It's a really tough scene. I'm watching Deion Sanders is ticked off that his team was robbed in the locker room. I'm thinking, how low can you get to go into the locker room and rob student athletes from one team, but not the other? I mean, this stuff is tough, man. This is tough. That's why sometimes people don't want to listen, because it's tough.
And I know you gotta rock and roll. You have any last parting words or questions for Dr. Smith? I can't thank you enough for popping in the middle of your workday.
Yeah, no problem. Dr. Smith, thank you for everything you do. If there's anything that we could do to help cross promote, help provide data for you to do research on, let us know. And we're always willing to, participate and help if we can.
Oh, I'll be in touch, believe me, definitely.
Yes.
And vice versa. Thanks for sharing your story.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. And who appreciate you, man. Keep going, keep pushing, keep helping the kids, man.
Yeah.
Gets harder and harder. It gets hard, man.
Well, after 32 years, I still love it. In 5.5 years, I'll be coaching college ball again. So I'm gonna enjoy this wave, until my daughter graduates high school, and then my goal is to be at a Power 5 or professionally. So
That's right.
Whoa.
That's
Yep.
right. You got to sell it.
I'm gonna sell it. I'm gonna
Look
sell
at,
it.
you know,
Absolutely.
so Dominic took this basketball class with this dude, and the thing that he said Dominic did really well on the very first session was his ability to sell what he was that. And Dom was like, he gave credit to you about that. It was
I
cool.
love that. It's all a sales job, man. It's all a sales job. Have an amazing day. Shout out to
You
you and the
guys.
wife and the kiddos. All right,
Yes.
much
Thank
love,
Thank
bro.
you.
you. Talk soon. Bye-bye.
Can't thank Anthony enough. Dr. Smith, I want to ask you a question. You mentioned sports, and if you want to circle back to solitary confinement, anything else you want to, wrap up about that, because that's obviously a big part of your work. I watched the movie and read the book, Just Mercy, and some of the stuff I had to put the book down several times. Full transparency, literally in tears, several times. But um, let me ask you this question about just sports in general. We hear people advocating, and we had Colin Kaepernick in 2016, and we hear the LeBrons, and you mentioned, well, Anthony mentioned about allies, and it's when the white people, are allies that a lot of times people will listen, and there's not many white allies, and this is why I'm highly critical of the Tom Brady's and the Aaron Rodgers and the Eli and Peyton Mannings and the Troy Aikmans and the Tony Romos, because they'll do a mental health commercial, but they won't do anything with regards to any of these spaces that we're talking about. And so they don't have to, nobody has to do anything, but they don't leverage their platform at all. And so I'm talking about this probably on every podcast because, somebody in their inner circles you'd think would get a hold of them and be like, yeah, you got to protect your brand and stuff, but don't you want to do more, to advocate? So is there anything with regards to that or the one thing that I heard one time that I thought was interesting, you can go down either one of these places or finish up with solitary confinement. People have said that if Jackie Robinson had not integrated, that the power of the black dollar and where we are as a country would have been completely different if he had just waited and not crossed the color barrier in baseball. You think there's any truth to that? Because we always hear it was an amazing thing, but what if he had stayed, in the Negro leagues and the the economic system that we have in place basically favored white people, even though he crossed over and it was historic, and that should never be forgotten. But would we be in a different place economically if we had stayed segregated?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so because there would have been some other movement outside of a quote Jackie Robinson that those white baseball owners, when they saw the crowds of
Right.
mostly black people showing up to watch black teams, they would not have allowed that to go on without getting a piece of that particular pie.
Mm-hmm.
So it would have happened in some other configuration, I think. Um, the people who pay attention to this, who are telling us to get off the "I'm so happy" wagon that Jackie Robinson was allowed to play in Brooklyn, because it destroyed that particular institution as it existed at that time. Over a couple of years, it simply destroyed it. The best players were cherry picked out of that institution. So we asked the question, and there's some documentaries all over the place. What happened to this person and what happened to that person? And I'm on a podcast, I forget the name of it, that deals with the Negro Leagues. Just came out about 2 weeks ago. And they're celebrating players I'd never heard of. And I'm thinking, of course, there are all kinds of players who were great athletes who just disappeared once this person and that person and the 10 other people were picked up by these teams. The other teams just done, finished. I want to say something about allies and accomplices. Peter Norman, great sprinter, suffered unbelievably for standing on that victory stand. I don't think he raised his hand. I can't remember. I think he just stood there. But a lot of people don't know about what happened to him and his family, all because of that moment in Mexico City. And he was an ally and accomplice. Tom Brady and these people who now make, and the athletes weren't making any money, at least not big money at that time, track athletes. These people who are making millions and millions of dollars a year, more money in 1 year than most Americans make in a lifetime. They wouldn't tarnish their brand had they said, this young man by the name of Kaepernick, he's a good football player. He should be allowed to protest police brutality because it's real, it's happening. But he should also be allowed to play football. We wrote an article recently that addressed not just what happened, but the fact that legally Colin Kaepernick had the right to work. The right to work statutes, if they were upheld, he should have been allowed to continue to do what he did for a living. This, if you remember, Mike, this was a kind of argument that Muhammad Ali made when they took him out of the boxing ring.
That's right.
So these things are hard. They're complicated. If Jackie Robinson was so happy about what happened to him, listen to what he had to say at the end of his life, which also is interesting. At the end of his young life, the freaking stress from putting up with crap like that will kill you. We know now because we pay attention to mental health and all these things on a daily basis. He probably didn't know at the time. I mean,
Right.
he was suffering.
Mm.
And so it wasn't good. And then he had that run in with left wing people, communist people, etc., saying, "Look, man, you got to get on the right side of things." With Paul Robeson, sports, we say, is a microcosm of the society we live in, and it is. And as prisoners will tell you, anything that goes on in this prison, anything that goes on outside this prison goes on inside this prison. So we have these institutions where we think we have walls that allow something to happen on a football field or allow something to happen in a prison institution. All of this stuff is interconnected in big, big, big ways. And that's why I appreciate your show. Sports, yeah, but also life, but also society. And the more we do that, I think the better off we're going to be, because we don't live in isolation. You
Well,
talk to those 1950 Black
yeah,
student athletes at different colleges around the country. They couldn't even live in the dormitories.
right.
They played for the teams, but they couldn't live in the dormitories. They had to live in the quote, the Black side of town, wherever the college was located. I'm thinking, this is horrible, and people need to know that. Anyway, I know you got to go.
No, we're good. But the other thing is, a lot of that stuff's still going on now. It doesn't have to be the 50s or 60s. So, that's the other part of it. Like, it's just mind blowing that we're still considered a superpower and one of the most advanced countries in the world, and we allow the goalposts to be constantly moved. We don't have thoughtful discourse. We don't seek a greater understanding. And as you talked about earlier, we don't have that give and take, and we can't find any middle ground when everybody wants to get the last word in. So, speaking of the last word, I'm going to leave the floor to you, but I want to ask some of these rapid fire questions because this is the fun part of the show, ladies and gentlemen. So, buckle your seatbelts, whether you're in Delaware, uh, or in California or anywhere in between, east or west of the Mississippi. So you've written 12 books. Are you starting your lucky number 13 or?
Yep.
Yes. And what's the title? Do we get a snapshot?
For everything we think we know about Black men,
Hmm.
there is really no research on Black men in American society. And, I think only about 1,500 men who play sports get paid enough to pay the mortgage. Not a lot. It's a narrow, small pool of people who get paid to do that.
Hmm.
But we have Black men who do what you do, who do what I do, but we don't have a comprehensive picture of who they are. I mean, I don't mean the stars. I don't mean the great ones like W.E.B. Du Bois and
Hmm.
Jackie Robinson and Kareem and all those people. I mean, people who get up every day, put oatmeal or whatever their kids are eating at that particular era, make sure they have the kind of shoes they need to walk to school and just do regular, ordinary things, hoping that they get up the next day and can do the same thing all over again. And when you put that issue of Black men against things like incarceration, employment,
Their white
social
their white
social class.
counterparts.
Excuse me.
Their white counterparts.
Exactly. Why are you being paid less than for comparable work? And once I'm trying to structure this so that we can get a wide-ranging portrait of who these men are and what they do. And some of them definitely are not famous. So I'm just waiting for
Right.
this publisher to give me the green light here.
Oh, that should be fascinating stuff. Generational trauma. There's a lot of components to that will paint that picture. Definitely looking forward to that. That's amazing. What's the holdup with reparations nationwide versus some local and states that have tried to start it with, it's sort of laughable, but yeah, it's not really funny.
There's a project, I think a good one, called the 1619 Project. Came out of the New York, of all places, the New York Times. And their initial rollout was just unbelievable. They had some pamphlets, they had blogs, they had people all over social media. And they were just trying to say, look, because of this institution of slavery, certain things were blocked or blocked off for a segment of the population. And it happened, we think it started in Virginia, but then it was everywhere. I mean, there's some wonderful, solid social histories of slavery in the North, because we believe it didn't move above the Mason-Dixon line. We know that people couldn't get married legally. People couldn't go to church. They couldn't go to school. And you say, well, that was a moment in time. But these projects tell us that it wasn't just a moment in time. These things progressed over hundreds of years. So why not look at these folks who, however you put together the package, and do something to enhance their financial abilities? People actually in positions of power, I think, especially the new people in positions of power, don't think that institution existed or didn't exist in the form of 4 pieces of fat back, 2 pecks of corn, a pair of shoes for a year. People believe that's just fairy tale. Didn't happen that way. Even learned historians have written to tell us it didn't happen that way. So the reparations is held up by ignorance. The reparations is held up by things like hatred, like racism. I hate to point out that, the government did something for interned Chinese, for Asians who were sent to these work camps. But there was a little piece of reparations done there. I think people ought to look at what that was and how it unfolded. But the research on why African Americans are not receiving reparations is getting larger and larger and larger, because people are asking the question you asked. What's the holdup? Do we need more evidence? I don't think so. We just need people in power to buy into the fact that these blockages existed and stunts growth or stunted growth.
Yeah, I wish we would come correct there and fix the homelessness problem. It's ridiculous already.
You want to hear what the mortgage rates are currently? 8-10%. There's no way you can handle 8-10% on $500,000, $300,000. You can't do it.
As a teacher, as a professor, yeah.
You can't. I mean, I ride by on my bike 4 or 5 times a week, homeless population in a little college town that's supposed to be just idyllic. You got university buildings, you got libraries, you got museums, and then way down on the other side by the railroad tracks, you got homeless camps. Hidden from view, people drop off food, throw the food out the window of the car as they're driving by, just throw the bag out the window. It's horrible.
Yeah, it is. Do you have faith in the Gen Zers and social media to fix a lot of this stuff?
No, because there's too much negativity. when the internet kicked in, a provost at our college at that time said, "This is the greatest thing that happened for academics because you can correspond with people all the way around the world. You can send, documents to each other and all that stuff." And I'm thinking, wow, you can do that with it. And at that time, you had to have a telephone connection,
Right.
put it into the thing. And it's just blown up to be this sort of out of control mess. The Facebook thing was supposed to be wonderful. I could send birthday cards to my grandmother and all of that. And people are sending, whatever you call it, naked pictures and telling people you better pay up or I'm going to put these pictures on the internet. Bullying
Right.
people, young people, old people, the racism, the stuff with Jewish people over the past couple of weeks. It's horrible. It's a lot of hate. You even tell people sign off for 3 or 4 days at a time so you don't get overstressed that you have to go get medicine for.
Yeah. Well, there is that glimmer of hope that there could be one thing that changes a mindset or a narrative because of it, because you can get to the masses so quickly. So I guess I'm an optimist. What is your favorite movie of all time? Let's get through these pretty quickly here if we can. Quick answers. Well,
I'm gonna say In the Heat of the Night.
wow. Interesting. You have a favorite athlete of all time?
Ali.
Yeah. Waffles, French toast, or pancakes?
French toast like my mother used to make.
Ooh. Was that with like potato bread or challah bread or just
It
regular bread?
was Wonder Bread. White as it could be, unhealthy as it could be, but boy, we had it on Sunday morning.
Fluffy. Right.
Yep. Yep.
Heck of fluffy. One or two words that come to mind with each of the following. Donald Trump.
He saved our friend that was on the show a few minutes ago.
Barack Obama.
Great president.
LeBron James.
Superman.
Who's your second favorite athlete of all time?
Probably you would know this being in California, Henry Rono.
Wow, I don't know who that is. I got to be
You
honest.
got to look up Henry Rono.
Wow.
Henry Rono set 3 or 4 world records in like 70 days. A Wazoo guy, middle
Wow.
distance, the Rift Valley of Kenya. And he was an alcoholic of the worst type
Wow.
and could put down alcohol all night long and go out and run 13 minutes for the 5,000 meter.
Man, that's
Tragic
fascinating.
story, but if you saw the beauty of this guy, it was you can he's on some YouTubes.
Wow.
I mean, he was like unbelievable.
Wow, that's incredible. I'll have to look that up. Steph Curry.
The little guy from Davidson College
Incredible.
set fire to the NCAA that year.
Yes, he did. Serena Williams.
I'm talking about her tonight. A wonderful, wonderful champion, a wonderful person, underappreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. For obvious reasons to us.
Yep.
Magic Johnson.
Great athlete, great athlete, humanitarian, philanthropist. Yeah.
And one of the first, if not the first, black billionaire.
Yep.
Amazing.
Outside of movies and
Right.
things like that.
Yeah. What do you want to do on your 100th birthday?
Go fishing.
Man, that's amazing. Colin Kaepernick.
Unfortunate.
Yeah.
Let me just say this, Mike. We wrote articles about this.
Yeah.
And this is going to be hard. If 10 athletes who were being paid the big money not the taxi squad types. If 10 big time athletes had kneeled or stood, whatever you want to say, kneel or stood with Kaepernick, they never would have pushed him out of the league. If 10 superstars, those people you named earlier, Brady's and all those folks, if they had said, wait a minute, this is not going to happen, he never would have been pushed out of the league. Take a real hard look at who supported him.
That's why I'm so adamant and frustrated about that situation. And he can't even get a practice squad, barely a look on a practice squad. You have a cross-country flight. Money is not an issue. Do you take a business class on Spirit Airlines for $299, first class on Delta for $899, or a charter flight for $7,500 where you can lay down and have your own privacy?
Depends on who's paying.
Money's not an issue.
I mean, the woman who wrote the book M.A.O.L., if your listeners don't know that book M.A.O.L., it's fascinating. So she made a few bucks on the book, and anybody that writes books knows that you really don't make money, especially if you wrote it yourself. These celebrities who write their books, they really don't write them. But anyway, this woman wrote a book called M.A.O.L., and a reader or somebody saw her sitting in first class and thought she didn't deserve to be there. Her book is about toiling and poverty and cleaning people's toilets and whatnot. And so she made a few bucks, took her out of poverty. Her kids could go to school properly clothed, and somebody spotted her in first class and went nuts on social media.
Awful. If you could dedicate this podcast to one person, who would it be?
Wow. It's a no-name person, only because listeners wouldn't know who that is. But a young student I met at Wake Forest who grew up in middle class, or it's close to middle class status, wanted to go to medical school and found out he had ADHD, couldn't concentrate. And so his grades weren't that great. And so he had to take remedial classes to get in. He wanted to be a medical doctor, but he had to take remedial classes at University of Virginia to get into business school, and he did that. And he ended up going to Harvard. And he got a MBA at Harvard and a Ph.D., both 2 degrees at the same time. And now he's a small African-American business owner of a major like hamburger line. Five Guys. I would dedicate it to him. He has 2 wonderful daughters.
He's the founder of Five Guys?
Oh, no.
Okay. He has franchises.
He has franchises.
Got it.
But here's a young man who took the hard knocks that he was given. He was beat down, said, you're not going to medical school, at a time when everybody wanted to go to medical school. And he took those remedial classes and
wow.
Yep. Wonderful. I try to make contact at least once or twice a year.
Man, that's an amazing story. You want to share his name? Shout out to him.
Yeah. I'll just say Jonathan.
There we go. Shout out to J Money.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
North Carolina.
Man, shout out to Wake Forest and your previous employer. Should the national anthem be changed?
No, in fact, they shouldn't do anything with it since Flavor Flav sang it the other night.
Well, that third verse is racist, but so I just figured I'd ask. So last question, if you could have, there you have it. I should end it on that with Flavor Flav, yeah. So you could have 5 people at your dinner table, past or present, dead or alive, that you've never met before. Who would be at your dinner table?
I know about them, but I've never met them.
You can know about them as long as you've never met them.
In person.
Yeah, dead or alive, yeah. Past or present.
Hillary Clinton.
Wow.
Because of her proposal on healthcare when she was a first lady.
Wow.
Definitely Jackie Robinson. That's two. There's a gentleman who I credit teaching me how to study sports. He's from your neighborhood out there, Harry Edwards,
Wow. Phenomenal.
who's in some health, like
Mhm.
most of us get older, some health,
Mhm.
but Harry. Sampson, Houston,
Ralph Sampson.
University of Houston.
Mhm. Wow.
Uh,
That's a first.
took my son into basketball camp when we were out there at Wazoo, when he became the head coach at Wazoo.
Mhm. Kelvin.
Calvin Sampson, that's right. Was very, very, I mean, I know they were making money for those camps, but he was just very nice.
Wow.
And then
The next president of the United States, ladies and gentlemen, Michelle Obama. No, I've heard rumors. Man, that would be amazing. I
she's
called
at the
it.
table. She's at the table,
Yep.
especially with the going high and going low.
Right. I love it. Well, can't thank you enough. Have an amazing lecture today. It was truly an honor, and definitely we'll have you back. We got Danny Collins coming on the show down the road. His story is incredible. And Comrade Sadiq, another one who spent 21 years in prison for something he didn't do. Supposed to have a 60-year life sentence, and he got out after 21 years. So, any parting words? Can't thank you enough. Truly, truly an honor.
Well, I'm the one honored and really appreciate it. And I'll be reaching out to our co
Yeah,
guests
absolutely.
shortly.
All right,
Thanks a lot.
sounds good, Doc. Appreciate you.
Thank
Professor Dr.
you.
Earl Smith, ladies and gentlemen. Can't thank him enough. That was epic. All right, until next time. Much
Bye
love,
bye.
everybody. Peace. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast, everyone. And here are today's outtakes.
I can tell you one of the things that's etched in my memory is 15 years living on the Palouse. That's etched in my memory is 15 years living on the Palouse up at Wazoo. It was an incredible run, isolated, packed with athletic talent, men and women, at least in the era that I was there. I think the big shot was Jack Thompson, and they would announce, every now and then who he was, what he did. But this place when I was there was just packed with I mean, if you went out to the track for practice on a Tuesday when it was clouded over or raining, the stands were packed just for practice to watch these men and women. You got a team with 4 or 5 high jumpers who could jump over 7 feet, all of them, 4 or 5. And I mean, if you know track, some of the middle distance runners were monsters. I mean,
Yeah.
these cats could fly, and people came to practice to watch this. I felt very, very special to be in that space because there was nothing else to do there. And they had some pretty good basketball teams, but they weren't great. What's
What
his name?
years was this?
What 80? I was there in
Right.
81, 82. George Raveling was the basketball
Right.
coach.
Yeah.
What's his name was the track coach. I forget his name, but it'll come to me. But these teams were incredible. So I appreciated being out there. And people always ask me, is there something in your academic background that we don't know? And usually it's the Palouse. An
That's fascinating.
incredible, isolated place.
So now, for people that don't know what you're talking about or where, let people know exactly where that is, where George was earlier in his career.
Washington State,
There you go.
south of Spokane, not Spokane, Spokane.
Right.
6 hours to the west, if my geography is correct, Seattle. It was incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And track and field has changed, obviously, a lot since then.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, and we are. Oh man, that was amazing. If you're interested in this shirt, for those of you watching on YouTube, You can purchase this shirt. It's around $32 or something like that. You can get it in orange, this color, or it's in gray. And they have a hoodie, they have long sleeves, so they have multiple options as well. We want to support women and the history of women's basketball in every sense of the word. So thanks again for joining us today, everybody. Much love. Talk soon. Everyone. Feel free to send me an email to thesportsdeli@gmail.com. Also, check out my link tree. It's /Mike Hootner. Also, like to thank a few people. 40 Tons Brand is a socially conscious cannabis brand, and they're doing amazing things. Check them out. We'd also like to thank Moolah Kicks, the first ever female brand basketball shoe in the history of the world. We'd also like to encourage you, if you're having a hard day and if you're feeling like you just don't want to live anymore, all you have to do is dial 988 from any phone, and there will be someone there 24/7, 365. So don't feel like you have to fight this battle alone. Don't forget to do your self-breast and self-testicular exams every month. It's really important, as early detection is the key. Remember, Black Lives Matter. Reach out to your local and state politicians for any individual or group that you feel are being marginalized. Stop the bullying. Stop the Asian hate. Let's end gun violence with common sense laws. Let's be allies for the LGBTQIA+ community. And I challenge those of you in the white space to be anti-racist, to be bridges and vessels, to help bridge the gaps between black and white America. And remember, until next time, it takes a village, everyone. Much love.